So let's take the example of Serena Williams, just announced her retirement at the time of recording, one of the greatest athletes of our times. But even at her very elite level, Serena won't be, if you like, US Open fit all year round. She'll have periods where she's looking ahead to the tournament she wants to play. She gets ready by doubling down on her nutrition, hydration, her speed work, her energy, and so on. She'll play the tournament, and then she'll get a little bit of recovery in. Not a lot. She's not going to take weeks off, but a little bit of recovery, because she knows recovery is as important as training, or recovery is kind of the missing piece for a lot of busy professionals who may be listening in. So I think we can learn a lot from that, because that kind of look ahead, get ready, get it done, recover methodology is what I call cadence.
You are now listening to the highlight reel builder for authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer and author of the best-selling book, Stay the Course, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some goodies today from the guest that's up next. Today's episode is sponsored by book number 2 from Dominic Dom Brightman, Stay the Course, The Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. It is the field guide to help unleash the elite performer that is inside of you. Cop it today on Amazon.com or heading over to dombrightman.com and snag it in book, ebook, and audio book, so that way you can take it on the go and get yourself on the go to your northbound success. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as the Going North podcast, we got another super special awesome human for you today, courtesy from two places. First off, podmatch.com, the site where folks get to pull out a matchbox, aka podcast guests, and they get to pitch themselves to podcast hosts. And if they're super special awesome, they're in. Well, this is one of those cases where we have a super special awesome human that's in, and she's hailing all the way from the UK, baby, because she's a best-selling author, TEDx speaker, keynote speaker, and a well-being consultant that has specialized in well-being for over 10 years. So a decade, folks, with over 13 qualifications in exercise and nutrition. So she is a decorated expert, baby. That's right, indeed, a decorated expert who knows her freaking stuff. So let's give it up for the LS herself, the lovely and stupendous Leanne Spencer. How you doing today, Leanne?
Well, I'm doing very well, Tom. What a welcome. I'd love to have you, with no disrespect, follow me around everywhere and do an introduction like that. That was magnificent.
Woohoo! Well, my plum pleaser pleasure today. Definitely gotta acknowledge the folks who do great work in the world and putting some pen to paper on top of that too. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Well, hey, as with all introductions, they're not allowed to be 13 days long. And since it's your first time appearing on the show, usually I like to get a little bit of the backstory of the guest for the folks listening to you for the first time. So mind filling in any cavities I may have missed about you?
My backstory, I mean, I'm in my late 40s. I'd say I had a life of two halves. I'll keep it brief. I'm not going to give you everything from GCSEs as they are here that you do when you're 16 all the way up and put people to sleep, but you can live without it. So I'd say I've got a life of two halves, really. Up until 2012, obviously growing up and all the rest of it, I worked in the City of London doing a job in a sales role, working as an account director for a market data company. And I progressively became more and more burnt out, really stressed. And I was thinking about this before I've come on, because I've told this story quite a bit, and I wanted to give you a different version of it. And I think there were 4 things that started to become to erode and to become more important to me. And then those values, if you like, weren't being met in the city environment I was in. And those things that I started to become hyper aware of were autonomy, being my North Star, if you like, just to link it back to your podcast name. Having autonomy in as much of my life as possible is really, really important to me. And I would find myself in my old job sitting at sort of 2 or 3 o'clock, knowing I've gone off the boil, as the expression goes. You know, I'm done. I really need to get away from this screen and do something else. And I'd be looking at the clock in the bottom right-hand corner of my PC, you know, wishing those minutes, those hours away till I could go home. And I thought I need to do something that has more autonomy to it. And I think autonomy is one of the underappreciated aspects of well-being. We talk a lot about sleep, mental health, energy, and so on, but we don't think so much about things like autonomy. Or another thing that was really important to me at the time and wasn't getting met in that city environment, and that's variety. I found that life was quite samey. I mean, I'm not complaining too much because a sales role can be richly rewarding. But you come in, you do a day's work, a day becomes a week becomes a month, you get paid, the whole thing starts again. And there isn't a huge variety in terms of the types of people you'll be talking to or surrounded by or the nature of the work you're doing. So autonomy, variety were two things that weren't being, two important values that weren't being met. And I also don't think I had a great set of values around that time. And that's something else I think contributes to burnout. We tend to think of burnout as working too hard. That's the first thing that will typically come to mind. And then we'll go to possibly drinking too much alcohol or not getting enough sleep or not getting enough movement and physical exercise. But actually having a poor or set of values that don't reflect what's really important to you, I think also is a key contributor to burnout. And my values, actually, I don't know what my values were at the time. I couldn't really tell you. They were certainly more predicated around money than they are now. But I increasingly realized that I was surrounded by people who didn't meet those values. I wasn't doing anything to take complete responsibility about that, or really getting clear on what my values were, what's important to me, which I'm very, very clear on now. And it's something we may or may not come back to. And then the other thing was environment. I wasn't in an environment where I could thrive. The city environment, the people within it, the types of work, the sort of glorification of alcohol consumption and things like that. None of that was enabling me to thrive. And all of that came to a head when I went to a sales meeting one Friday afternoon in 2012, where I was expecting a big order to come in. And the client was basically building a system, some hardware for his client that would require the data that my company provided to be fed into the back end, if you like. So my client was the guy building the system for his client. And I got into that meeting room and my client said to me, look, I'm really sorry, Leanne, but this deal's not going to happen. My client's pulled out. We aren't going to need that data. So I knew, leaving that meeting on that Friday afternoon and crossing London Bridge and getting on my commuter train, that this was a pretty good opportunity for me to evaluate where I was and where I wanted to be. And where I was is a couple stone at least heavier than I am now, though that's actually the least important thing. Burnt out, chronically abusing alcohol, and really wasting my life. And what I mean by that is, it's no way to spend your life looking at the clock on your PC, wishing days, weeks, and months away. I knew there was a lot more I could do, a lot more potential that could be fulfilled. So long story short, I resigned. Within a week of walking out of that sales meeting, I've handed back my laptop, my pass, my BlackBerry, which dates it, and all the other stuff that a company gives you when you start working for them. And I had a complete reevaluation of what I was doing, made some huge changes across a number of different areas of health, but slowly. They were huge changes in the end, but they started off as quite small shifts towards how I wanted to be. And that sort of takes you on the path to what I'm doing now, which 10 years on, I'm a keynote speaker, a wellbeing consultant, I'm a podcaster, an author. So, that's what I mean about two separate lives. To conclude that story, it's where I am today feels a world away from where I was pre-2012.
Ah, yeah, that's right indeed. That's right indeed. Well, congrats on the 10-year anniversary. That's right. That's right indeed. That's right
Thank you.
indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, because that's definitely a bad feeling. It's always just staring at the bottom, right corner, left corner, whatever, seeing like, okay, this clock, it's ticking, but not fast enough. Oh, last 5 minutes of the shift. It feels like 5 hours of the shift. It's like, oh, no. And it's like, oh, now you get to do what you love. And it's like, oh, man, where did the time freaking go? No. But yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But my goodness, like those two things that stuck out to me is like, hey, you just wanted that autonomy and that variety. And it's like, depending on what you do, good luck finding both of them. And it looks like you're able to get to the place where you actually have both of them now. So, my goodness, what was it like making that transition to entrepreneurship? Well, then again, it probably wasn't too bad since you came from the sales world and was basically entrepreneurship but with the company almost.
Yeah, and this is another thing I think with burnout. Quite often, people have grown up wanting to be, okay, sometimes it's things like ballerinas and astronauts, and let's face it, very few of us achieve success in those two fields. But, we grow up wanting to do one thing or being interested in something, like animals or the environment or racing cars or whatever it is. And then we end up doing something completely different, because in that middle bit, we've been influenced by our peers, heavily influenced possibly by parents. No, you don't want to do that. There's no money in that. Go that way. Medicine, law, accountancy, whatever it might be. And when I was young, I really emulated and looked up to my father, who's an entrepreneur. I used to sit at his desk and imagine me taking calls. In fact, I answer the phone with my name exactly the same way that he does, even now, with my name and a slight inflection on the end. And quite young, we set up our first, I'm doing air quotes now, business. Myself, my oldest friend Adam, and my brother Stuart. And we had a car cleaning, I say company. This is pre that. We used to go around and clean cars for money. We used to do the same with gardening. Well, I would knock on the door and make the sale, and then my brother and Adam would do the gardening. So that was quite sweet. And then someone I was at school with, a guy called John, he created what's called a sand surfer. So it's a little bit like a wakeboard now. And it's this piece of plywood that they put Gorilla Grip on, so your feet grip onto it, and then use seatbelt material to make straps, and you slide your feet in. So it's basically somewhere between a snowboard and a wakeboard. And we used to live near a quarry, and you could take those things down there and surf down the quarries. So sand surfers. Now, I thought it was a brilliant idea. We went up to a DIY shop and we bought all the requisite parts, put them together, and we created a business, Sand Surfers, I think it was, and got in earlier. And of course, we're only selling a few of these to mates, but it's a great example of you don't need to have come up with the idea, but you do need to have been first. We actually opened a Portman Building Society account. So people in the UK might remember that. Didn't do a lot of trading, but that was the first example of being entrepreneurial. And that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to go into business, but then went off to university, did an English literature degree, which in some ways is useless and in some ways is valuable, because reading a lot, becoming more articulate, perhaps being able to write yourself as a result is a huge skill. And it doesn't limit you. If you do a law degree, the logical thing to do next is join a law firm or go to law school. So it left me going in whatever direction I wanted. But I did the worst thing any budding entrepreneur can do, which is went straight into working for someone else, and ended up working for someone else for about 17 years before 2012 came about. And I got back into the entrepreneurial hot seat, as it were. So it wasn't, to answer your question, the transition from what do I do next was a joyous one, because I thought I could literally do anything. And I thought perhaps the easiest, the things that I'm interested in are health, even though the way I was living at that time wasn't healthy at all, and also business. And I thought, well, a quick and easy way to intersect those two things is personal training. So I retrained as a personal trainer. Could not believe that my job was to go meet a client down at the park. I mean, I'm simplifying this, but hold pads for them that they could use the boxing gloves to punch into, throw medicine balls towards them, coach them through some strength moves, some cardiovascular exercise. And I just couldn't believe that was my role. But after a while, wanted to do more. We started to coach individuals, and I really got into away from coaching and more into becoming a subject matter expert and ultimately a speaker. But the transition from going from paid employment to having nothing to go to and no savings in the bank, which might have been what you're referring to, and that wasn't so easy in some ways, but was incredibly easy in others. So not easy in the sense that it takes guts, I suppose, or you need to be in a desperate enough place to not care and just take the risk, which I'd say is where I was. But it was also incredibly easy because I really wanted to get out of what I was doing. And as I said, I couldn't believe that I could earn money, albeit not as much, but I could earn money going down to the park, being in natural light, moving my own body, helping other people become healthier versions of themselves. So in many ways, it was a very, very easy transition.
That's what I'm talking about, dude. That's right. So you're basically born for it. You just need to have a 17-year hibernation, no fire period.
Yeah, I mean, there's easier ways to do it, Dom, but yeah, it worked out for me in the end. And, it's not to say that I didn't learn a lot working for other people in a sales environment. I obviously did.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Because sales, that's basically everything. We're selling to
Everything. Yeah.
everybody. Yeah. Heck, we have to sell to
Yeah.
ourselves every now and then. Almost every day.
Oh
It's like,
yeah.
darn.
Yeah, for sure.
And speaking of selling, actually sold your way by getting so physically fit. You actually became a Bear Grylls, if I'm saying that right, survival instructor, and tongue tie
Yeah. So it's
instructor.
Bear Grylls. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So, what does that entail? Are you preparing folks for the zombie apocalypse? Like, how does that work?
Who knows about the zombie apocalypse? But so Bear Grylls, for anyone who hasn't heard of him, he's a ex-SAS guy who's done some incredible things. Youngest guy to climb Everest, I think. He's very well known on TV if you watch those kind of programs now, but he's also done quite a bit outside of that. He leads the Scouts here in the UK, for example. And I went, it was about 3 years ago. So my oldest friend, Adam of the gardening and the car washing fame, my oldest friend, he and I very recently decided we do an adventure every year. So 3 years ago, I think it was me that found the Bear Grylls Survive the Highlands course. This is a 5-day flagship course offered by Bear Grylls. He's not there, I'll add that. And you basically go up to Scotland on day one, then you do this 5-day course where they're simulating survival as best they can. So you don't go through a doorway for 5 days. You're sleeping outside in shelters that you've built yourselves, if you have built a shelter. You're eating a 24-hour ration pack and then the odd Mars bar or potato that they hide as a reward if you manage to find the coordinates and find the stash. They even left us a maggoty hair hanging off a tree and we were hungry enough to cook it and eat it. I wasn't vegetarian at the time, but I am now, not as a result of that, I'll add. They teach you water purification, navigation, river crossings, rapid rappelling, Tyrolean rope crossings, all this kind of stuff. A lot of what you see Bear doing, except perhaps not the really extreme stuff, or the sleeping in dead animals, or the drinking your own bodily fluids, or any of the slightly more extreme stuff he does. But other than that, you go through a sort of 5-day simulated survival scenario. And what do you learn from that? Well, you get to meet some people. Some of them you quite like, some are idiots, but you have to work together as a team. You learn a lot of survival skills. You kind of put yourself to the test. So it's quite something, really, sleeping rough for 5 days when you don't actually need to. It makes you feel very glad that you don't have to do that. But also you get a sense of just how you cope when there's no niceties, no conveniences around. And you've got to control your mood, manage your energy. You're hungry, you're cold, you might be a bit fed up. But you also learn other skills that I've used in lots of other scenarios, like navigation, like the priorities of survival. I've actually used some of what I've learned to expand on what I offer to corporates. So I may take I may do a keynote for a company, and then if they're in a hotel, for example, and it's out in a park, we'll go outside and look at some of the priorities of survival as well. So it gets people outside on their feet after a keynote. So that's quite fun. So there's been a number of reasons why I did it and what I've got from it. And at the end of that, so it's not a leaderboard scenario. So there's 12 of us on that course, me, Adam, and 10 other men. It's not a who can get in first, because on the last day, they simulate a rescue scenario. I won't go into all the details of it, but they pretend, well, you are lost. They give you coordinates of the top of a mountain you have to get to. And then they basically pretend that the weather's turning and you've got half an hour to get to another point that they point to. And you basically sprint there. You're roped across a ravine and you run up another hill and into a jeep, and that's you rescued. So they're basically pretending that you are lost and there's a weather window, but it's only 30 minutes long and you've got to mobilize quickly. And I was the third one to come in. So there was a military guy from somewhere in Europe who got in first, then Adam, then me. But it wasn't a question of top 5 or top 3, but it was a pretty good showing in terms of strength, energy, and fitness. And the instructor said to me, or one of the instructors, Anna, she said to me at the end of it, you should think about being an instructor because you've got what it takes. And it just sowed a seed of, yeah, I could actually, that'd be quite fun. Back to my point about variety, keynote speaking, or the last 2.5 years, it's basically been talking to a laptop in an office here in West Dulwich. Wouldn't it be great to do some of that Bear Grylls stuff as well? Now, lockdown in the UK, so March 2020 struck. So there was no Bear Grylls work for at least 1.5 years. And in that time, I've decided that actually going halfway around the country for not a lot of cash, setting up and packing down is probably not what I want to be doing, or a great use of my time. But I've still used those skills personally, but also professionally. So I would suggest to anyone, if you want to sort of test your mettle a little bit, and develop another layer of resilience, do something like that, because it's an uncomfortable experience, but you do learn quite a bit about yourself doing it.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about, indeed. And that's definitely good too, because it's like the thing is with all the technology that we have available, it's a huge gift to us, especially the times that we're in. But it's like it's too good, where it's like, hey, let's suck you in for hours. Let's have
Mm.
you watch all of Netflix for the next 24 years for no reason at all. And it's like, hey, you got to get outside and actually get in nature, and that can even maybe even take it to another level like you did. So my goodness, so do you think that really folks not really tapping into the power of nature contributes to the high burnout that we got going on nowadays on top of everything else?
I think it can do, yeah. I mean, some of us are more connected to nature than others, and that can be down to a whole host of things. Some people just don't feel that comfortable outside. I think disconnection is a huge source of burnout, whether it's disconnection from meaningful work, purpose, values, could be nature, could be ourselves, could be, our original personalities, could be from other people. There is incredible benefits of getting out in nature. I mean, for me, it feels like coming home, to sort of take your shoes off or not and walk on the sand or in the water or amongst the trees. But there's some clever stuff going on as well in nature. It's not only the feeling of expansiveness and the fresh air, and the multiple sounds and all the life that surrounds you, creatures in the undergrowth, the dog, if you're walking the dog, the birds in the trees, but even the trees themselves. I mean, leaves give off these chemicals called phytoncides, and they are very positive for the immune system. So there's clever stuff going on when we're out in nature as well. I think it's really where we're supposed to be. And the fact that we could walk out in nature and improve our immune systems just by being in amongst the leaves is quite extraordinary, I think. And then you've got the other benefits of the ability to switch off a little bit and think. If you're with somebody else, you can often have some very expansive and interesting conversations, because if you're both walking, you're looking ahead, not at each other. So it can be a lot less intense. If you leave your technology behind, you really are free. Nothing is going to bing, ding, or whir to interrupt you. There's the benefits of grounding as well. If you have your shoes off, you're really connecting with the earth. So, I mean, I'm a huge fan of it. I live in the city, as we established in the introduction, but really, I'm a country girl who's adapted to city life, and we will get out in the next few years. But whenever I can, I'll get out to Kent, which is the county to the east of London, where we've got another place, but also there's within 40 minutes drive of London, which is quite strange to think about. You can go from the city, and within about 40 or 50 minutes, you can be on the outskirts of Kent and in some decent countryside. So that's what I make an effort to do every week or every 2 weeks, take the dog out. And often I have some really good ideas or thoughts or reflections when I'm out doing that walk. So that's the other benefit. If you need to think clearly, getting out in nature can often be a really good shout.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's right, indeed. You got to get out in that nature, y'all. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Get on the countryside. That's right, indeed. Get that leaf energy, y'all. Get that wonderful barefoot earthing swag, indeed, because folks need it. That's right, indeed. We need it. Hey, we're made out of dirt, as they say, so it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So my goodness. So on top of that, I'm pretty sure all that time in nature helps you to stay creative, because you got 3 books out, especially your most recent book at the time of this recording, Cadence. So my goodness. Do you believe Cadence might be the wonderful book to be the one that everyone needs to get? It might be the perfect masterpiece for folks need to get to avoid turning into a candle with no ends at all.
Hmm. Well, I'll let Masterpiece be the summary of somebody else, but I think it's my best book. One of the reasons I think that, and bear with, I'm a big proponent of my own work, but one of the reasons why I think it might be my best book is it's by a long shot my shortest. So I finally got the message that people don't want to read a bloody great big tome. They don't want thick, not that my previous 2 books were thick books, but their books are sort of 30, 40,000 words. This one's 8,500. So I've got to the point. It's often harder. This quote's always misattributed. I think it's Mark Twain that said, I've written a long letter because I didn't have time to write a short one, but I don't know. That quote's attributed to all sorts of different people, but it's harder to write something short and concise than it is to write something longer. But if the book is called Cadence, The Secret to Beating Burnout and Performing in Life and Work. So anyone that picks that up might be someone looking to optimize, but they're probably someone who's feeling somewhat burnt out. So writing something short and to the point for them makes perfect sense for where they're at when they pick it up. So for that reason, I think it might be my best book. It's my shortest. And in that, I talk about this simple methodology, which underpins all the work that I do, which we call the Agile Business Athlete methodology. Simple 4 steps. So let's take the example of Serena Williams from obviously the US, just announced her retirement at the time of recording, one of the greatest athletes of our times. But even at her very elite level, Serena won't be, if you like, US Open fit all year round. She'll have periods where she's looking ahead to the tournament she wants to play. She gets ready by doubling down on her nutrition, hydration, her speed work, her energy, and so on. She'll play the tournament, and then she'll get a little bit of recovery in. Not a lot. She's not going to take weeks off, but a little bit of recovery, because she knows recovery is as important as training, or recovery is kind of the missing piece for a lot of busy professionals who may be listening in. So I think we can learn a lot from that, because that kind of look ahead, get ready, get it done, recover methodology is what I call cadence. It's instead of going at full tilt all year round. So if you like Serena being US Open fit all year round, or a busy professional thinking they've got to perform at top level all year round with no breaks, which is what a lot of us think. If we were to follow that model, I think we do a lot better. I think we beat burnout, have more fun. So here's what it looks like. It's about predict. So your audience might think, well, when are those big events coming up for me in my personal and my professional life? Then we prepare for those big events by doubling down on sleep, mental health, energy. And then that I call building your bulletproof. The perform phase, the third phase, is about respecting your red flags. So I don't tell anyone how they can work hard and put a shift in, because everybody knows that. But just make sure you're not going too hard, too fast in that phase. And so respect the red flags that the body sends that suggest that you might be. And then lastly, recover, because when we back off, that helps us to beat burnout. But small things, what I call slivers of recovery. So for example, that might be finishing up on this call and just taking a couple of minutes to look out the window, reflect on our conversation, observe what's going on out the window. So I can see the building on the other side there, the trees moving in the wind. To my right, I've got a sleeping dog on the floor, and out the window, I've got the trees juxtaposed against blue sky with a church spire sticking out of the woods there. You're just taking a moment to notice that, letting your mind wander, maybe showing some gratitude or just daydreaming. That could be an example of a sliver of recovery. It might be going home tonight, having a bath, or sitting in the garden and not turning on my devices. It could be thinning out the schedule at the weekend, so you haven't got so many places you've got to be and you can actually have a lie-in or spend some time at home. And it could be booking a holiday. So all of those things are recovery. And I think that's the missing piece. Most of us go too fast, too hard through life, and we don't get enough recovery. And that's the methodology. It's really simple. Predict, prepare, perform, recover. And I put a little bit more meat on the bones in terms of what and how in the book. But that's it. That informs most of the work that I do. And I'm told when people observe that and they start to look ahead, prepare a little bit, get that thing done, and then get that recovery in, that they do feel better, they feel more in control of life, and they keep burnout at bay.
Woohoo! That's what I'm talking about. Keep that burnout at bay, y'all. That's right. Keep it at sea. That's right, indeed. Keep it far away. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, my goodness, predict, prepare, perform, and recover. All right. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That 3-piece swag, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. It's like you got the 3-point triangle and the laser of recovery. That's right, indeed. That magical laser of recovery. And it's so needed, too, because that's like the major thing for like top performers is that, oh yeah, I just got to be on all the time. It's like, hey, I got to work 9 days out of the week when that's not even possible. But it's like, hey, you got to recover from that. And a lot of folks who don't do that, that's usually means burnout or even worse for them indeed. And it's good that you decided to do that. And heck, even go the wonderful modern day distraction route and keeping it under 100 pages too. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. I usually ask this question later, but since we're on the book, if it was a food, what would it be and why?
There's a curveball. What would it be? So let's go with a smoothie, which is a mixture of a number of foods, but until you stop me, I'm going to go with it. It's energizing, it's nutrient dense, protein rich, good for you.
There you go.
Can I get away with a smoothie?
Of course you can. Smoothies are great.
Done.
That's right indeed. That's right indeed. That's right. It's one of those white space questions. You get to fill in the white space. That's right indeed.
I mean, to be honest, Tom, even if I'd had a little bit of warning that one was coming, I don't know what I'd have said. But I'm happy with that answer. Final answer, a smoothie.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good. It's all about interpretation. That's right indeed. Getting you to think. That's right indeed. Another way to sell the book on what it has to offer indeed. Hey, food to get you on the taste and the smell. So it's like, hey, smoothie. I remember a strawberry banana smoothie was freaking good. It has a protein powder in it too. It's a vitamin. Like, it's good. It's good. Smells great. Tastes delicious. Oh, sweet. This book is small. Tastes delicious because it's helping me to get more recovery for being a professional, trying to work 10 days out of the week when there's still only 7. Oh, man. So, my goodness. So, since you've been on these podcasts and you're a host of your own show, or I think you actually took a break from it, actually, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, from both of them. Remove the Guesswork was our first podcast. I forget how many episodes we got up to. I think it's about 250. And I wanted to change direction. So we discontinued that show. The episodes are still up there. Remove the Guesswork. Health, Fitness and Wellbeing for Busy Professionals, I think it's called. I've got a new show called the Agile Business Athlete podcast. We did a first season of that. And I'm thinking about what I'm going to do for the second season, probably something around the origins of burnout, because I think that could make a really interesting series of episodes. It ranges from personality traits to childhood experiences to the type of work you're in, the family you come from, all sorts of different things. So I think that could be really interesting. Get some psychologists on, get some subject matter experts, maybe people who've done the work and believe they know what the origin of their burnout is or their burnout story. So that's probably where I'll go with the second series. But podcasting, as you know, it takes time. And I think there's a lot of podcasts out there. And it's important to make sure you're bringing something new or you're bringing something presented in a different light or in a different style. So I don't just want to, I found in the health and fitness world as well, no disrespect to anyone, that you'd have the same sort of guests turning up on all the podcasts, which is great if you want to hear more from that particular guest. And often they share slightly different things about topics, but I didn't feel I could bring anything super fresh to that world at that point. So yeah, we moved to the Agile Business Athlete show, which is more in line with what I'm doing now as well.
Oh, yeah, and it's a cool name, too. Business Athlete. It's like, yeah, we're going for the gold medal, baby. It ain't just sales anymore. It's medals.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's a term that really resonates with people, actually, a business athlete. It's particularly when you explain it in context. It kind of, we are talking to people about presenting your services, and it's an expression that always stands out.
Heck yeah, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, my goodness, so if you were to... Actually, wait a second. What the heck am I saying? That ain't the question. The real question is, so since you've been doing all those podcasts and all these podcasts on the guest side of the game, is there a question that you wish to be asked more often?
That's a great question. Yeah. The sort of things that I would love to talk about And I don't get asked because it's not really that obvious in terms of what I do. But what I'm interested in now is talking about values and what I plan to do for the future. So it's interesting in the sense it's about me, but it isn't really about the guest unless it makes them, sorry, the audience, unless it makes them think about, for example, I think money lies at the root of just about everything bad that's going on in the world. Now, of course, we need money. We need that currency that we can transact goods and services for. But I think often you think about some of the stuff we were talking about off air, oil and gas prices, surging property prices, cost of living crisis, certainly here in the UK, money. The gas companies could give us discounts and they could not put the prices up, but they're profiteering in all likelihood. So thinking about this, we're a commercial business and we charge what we're worth. I have properties that I get an income for. And I got to thinking, well, what's all that for then? If you're against the sort of continual making of money as the sole objective for doing anything. So we're thinking now about how we can use some of that, take a certain amount for ourselves, and it's not big and it's not flashy, but how much money does a person need? And the rest of it will go into some sort of charitable aid foundation. We haven't created this yet. It's coming, where we will then give that money out to charities that meet our values, predominantly animal charities, but it will be others. And that's the kind of the question that, we won't have time to go into it all, but that's to answer your question. I would love at some point to talk about that, to talk about building legacy of stuff that's meaningful. And all of this is subjective. It's what I think that's meaningful. That's that cliche of giving back that takes us away from acquisition of things and status and more towards what I think we find rewarding. And of course, there's links to that back to well-being and back to burnout as well, because quite often burnout comes because we've deviated too far away from ourselves. So I have spent the last 10 years getting back to myself and what really matters to me. So yeah, that's a question I'd love to have been asked, but not in a, I wish you'd asked me that. Why didn't you ask me that question? But there's the answer.
There you go. That's
I'd
right.
love
So
to talk
Leanne,
more about that kind of stuff.
hey, well, it's all good indeed. It's all good indeed. So you're there, right, folks. Leanne loves the animals, y'all. I'm telling you. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Except for the cheetahs. She don't like cheaters. Let me stop.
Terrible. I love all animals. All animals.
That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Well, since you got all this wonderful success, I'm sure there's been some setbacks along the way. So outside of finally getting out of the 17-year incubation period, man, I must be tongue-tied like crazy today. Besides the 17-year incubation period, what would you consider your biggest failure that actually became your biggest success?
I wouldn't call it a failure, but in 2012, what had been, shall we say, an illustrious drinking career came to an head, where I alluded to it. I've said chronically abusing alcohol, but I was drinking a bottle and a half of wine a day, sometimes more, and that had been going on for years. So I wouldn't call any of that a failure, but it was taking me down a route that I just couldn't go down. About to have difficult questions raised at work, partner not happy, just about holding things together. So I took the decision, and that was part of what informed me to leave my city career and do something completely different. And in doing that, taking that jump to get out of the city, that facilitated a move into sobriety. So I haven't drunk anything for over 10 years. And from there, everything changed. So I wouldn't call identifying that heavy pattern of drinking as being a failure, but certainly you couldn't put the sort of any definition of success on it either. But from that came everything else. There is no way, the way I was going, I would be able to have been a PT, would have had the bandwidth or the headspace to learn about sleep, mental health, energy, body composition, digestive health, fitness, any of those things. There wouldn't have been books written, podcasts recorded, keynotes written, delivered, stagecraft honed, any of that stuff, had I not kind of hit rock bottom, if you like, and chose a different path. So Yeah, that without a shadow of a doubt is it.
Sweet. Well, congrats on 10 plus years sober. You love to see it.
Thank you.
That's right. Decade of sobriety, baby. And more to come. That's right. More decades to come. Indeed. That's right. Putting the bottle down and let it stay down. Indeed. That's right. Indeed. That's right. Indeed. Put the bottle down. Creativity ensues. That's right. Indeed. That's right. Indeed. So my goodness, coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive, and that is if you were to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again, but you're still in 2022, what advice would you give to yourself?
Wow. Don't go on social media. You probably heard that one before. I mean, I can't imagine. I had some old university friends over for the weekend, 3 of them. So there's 4 of us all together, and we're sitting in the garden, and me in particular was a real tearaway at uni, and we were trying to imagine what life would have been like with social media. You know, instead of waking up, and I'm not glorifying or glamorizing this, but instead of waking up and looking at your till receipts to see how much money you've spent, or having someone come in and going, "Oh, do you remember you said this? And do you remember we went there?" It would be on social media. And once it's on, it's on. Or people would have photos on their phone that they could, it'd just be a different world altogether. And I just wouldn't want to be in that. I think, fortunately, in the late 40s, we've got past, in the main, caring too much about what people think or trying to look a certain way or having these images of people with these perfect teeth and cosmetically altered features being heralded as the way we should look. I think I've dodged a bullet in that sense. So I think it would definitely be, do not go on social media. Has anyone given you that answer before?
Probably 1 or 2 other folks are like, oh, avoid it. It's the plague. It's the plague. It's evil. People's stupidity on display at a high level.
Yeah, and humiliation and everything else. Anyway, let's not end on that. And of course, I would say to myself, don't take this drinking any further. Put that down now. Spare yourself a lot of wasted time.
Pun intended, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. Waste of time being wasted. That's right, indeed. Don't do it. That's right. Think about your family. Think about your future. You can't be the cat's meow if you have too much of it. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. But hey, folks still need to be social and still follow on social media because I know you post some great stuff and book recommendations too, in addition to your own. So for those who need to do just that and keep up with your journey, Leanne, what's the best way for folks to do so?
Leanne Spencer Keynote, Leanne Spencer with a C. Keynote is my handle for LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. That's the best way.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. That's right, indeed. We're going to put the link to that in the show notes, indeed. So be sure to check it out like a library book. Check out her content, too. Check out all 3 of her podcasts are still out in the internet ether zones, indeed. Get all that wonderful knowledge and subscribe to the Agile Business Athlete so you, too, could be an Agile Business Athlete. That's right, indeed. You'll be jumping hurdles, climbing through mud. Come out a mud monster, but when they wash you off, you'll turn into a gold Buddha statue. I'm telling you, it'll be good stuff indeed. Good stuff indeed with all the O's out of a Cheerios box. So, my goodness, any parting words before we close up shop, Leanne?
Recovery is everything. And I'm not talking about alcohol now. You know, if you're listening in, you probably have got some success in life. You may be doing really, really well. But burnout comes from going too fast, too hard, and ignoring your red flags. So get that little sliver of recovery into your day. You decide what that looks like. Just get it done.
How's it going, my friend? I'm so glad you made it to the end. That shows that you are an uncommon finisher, and I am so grateful for you sharing your ears, your attention, and your time to this wonderful podcast. To do something that'll take yourself to the next level, and for everybody else involved in this wonderful program, share it with at least 3 people in your network so that way more folks can not only catch the fire that is on this podcast, but can also be inspired to be their best. Advance others to advance yourself.